Ah, finally.
That took long enough.
Third time's a charm.
That's right. It's all good. It's all good. I'm so glad that we could do this, and thank you so much for taking a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't need to ask you too many deep questions right off the bat. I feel like there's going to be a time and place for that soon enough. But if anything, maybe you can tell me a little bit about what the last week has entailed for you as a candidate for this office, the office of LA City Attorney. What's that meant for you the last week in particular?
Well, I think, I mean, what propelled me to run for this position is a lot of the work that I've been doing through this campaign is, going to meetings, going to mutual aid events, going to rallies, going to patrols, and seeing a complete absence of our elected officials. And so that is like a big motivator for me. And I think one thing I did this week, which was go to the Board of Police Commissioners meeting and again see this lack of leadership, lack of focus on protecting protesters, protecting people from ICE, and focusing on the people. And I saw that reflected in the fact that the chief of police was absent from the meeting for one. Secondly, they had mispresented or lied, if you will, about what happened and what transpired regarding the youth that were protesting in downtown and did not, even though we saw videos of them, charging at youth and whatnot, they denied, that happening. The fact that there was no accountability from the Board of Police Commissioners, which is a body that actually the city attorney advises. And the mayor appoints, those folks as well and can also intervene. And on top of that, a continuation of the militarization of our police by approving millions of dollars of drones through dark money through the police foundation. So I did a post about this already, but police foundations are, we don't know because they're nonprofits. We have no idea who is donating that money, what relation they have to, the city of LA, what relation they have to the businesses that are, getting money and resources from LA. And obviously, having, I think it was a $30 million, I'm pretty sure 30 or $30 million of drones, and they weren't just regular drones where they're just like, visually surveying the city. They had thermal imaging and other military grade equipment. I don't think we need thermal imaging. This is not the predator. Like we are not we are not at that level of needing to treat our citizens as the enemy, and that's what we're seeing, increasingly today, is that this increasing militarization of our globe is coming, as we say, blowback coming to roost at home now. Is like it's coming back here where our police offices are becoming more militarized, and as the Olympics come up, we're going to see an increase in that as well. And it's that's what I'm really concerned about, and that's why it's so important for us to vote for people who actually hold these people accountable, because we're going to see increased, displacement of people through policing and on top of the militarization. So that's been on top of going to different other events. Like I went up to an event about the Congo just on my personal time, connecting with community as an activist. I've been doing this type of work for decades. And then um, yeah, that's not the two things I can think of right now. I've done so many things this week, but those things really stood out. I think that's because they're the last 2 days, but I've done so much more than that as well. But
Yeah,
definitely.
of
Oh, we
course.
released our campaign video on
Yes.
Sunday as well, which was really amazing. Shout out to Elysian Films, that they did an amazing job, and yeah, yeah, it was. I think it was really well received, and excited about that.
Well, and of course, you also started gathering signatures to get your name on the ballot for June 2nd. That started this Saturday, February 7th. And so now you're actively canvassing and seeking people who live in the city of Los Angeles to essentially give you a shot at placing your name and your candidacy before 4 million voters, potentially up to 4 million voters in the city of Los Angeles alone. So, how many signatures are you supposed to gather before essentially submit this file? And when are you supposed to submit this file by?
So we have two options. We can either submit 500 signatures and pay $300, or we submit 1,000 signatures and we don't have to pay anything. And so, and it's always important to overshoot it because we don't know how many signatures actually qualify because they have to be approved and reviewed by the city clerk's office. So our goal is 1,000, and I think we're around a quarter of the way there. And the due date is March 4th, but we're trying to, meet that early on so that way we can, actually just canvass and make sure that we get on the ballot by having those evaluated early on.
Yeah, so then that means a whole lot of canvassing if you're trying to finish out early. February is also the shortest month, so that doesn't help much either. And but you've already invited folks to come out and join you for canvassing, including through this weekend, right? You'll be canvassing as soon as Saturday and Sunday, I take it.
Sunday, definitely, we'll be canvassing in Westwood, and we should be canvassing, having some more plans to canvass soon. I'll be at the Etna Very, Very Free Street Fair on Saturday in Van Nuys, and I'll be collecting signatures there and just talking to folks. It's a great place for people to come, a great source of mutual aid. The last time I came, I spoke to a lot of people there. I was invited by one of I think the founders at another event, and when I spoke to people there, they told me that I was the only candidate or elected official to ever visit the market,
Mm,
and it almost made me emotional because it's like this is an important place for people to be.
yeah.
Like it's sad that people are not going to the places of need and they tend to go to the places of the, wealthy or powerful because obviously, they want to align with themselves with that. But for me, I'm serving people of all different needs, and I'm going to be out there from 2 to 5 on Saturday by Van Nuys City Hall, and then Sunday we'll be meeting at 11 o'clock at the Westwood Library to do some canvassing in Westwood, Terrangelis, and yeah, and then tomorrow night, I don't know if you want to take that on about the event we'll have tomorrow night as well.
Of course I do. But just before I get to that event, I would really like for anyone who's meeting you, like tonight maybe, or tomorrow, the day after this video is published. I'm curious as to what you can tell them about yourself, because you're obviously running for public office now and you're hitting the ground running. You have a lot to do between now and March, as you mentioned earlier, but maybe you can tell me a little bit about Aida Ashouri even before this race. I mean, did you grow up in LA? How long have you called LA home? You also mentioned that you've been up to this work involving communities for decades. So maybe just tell me a little bit about that so that any viewer who's meeting you only after this live can know more about this candidacy.
Yeah, there's a lot to go into, but I think my background has really kind of inspired the work that I do in the sense that, I was born in Iran. I came here as an immigrant and I was raised by a single parent. A lot of my formative years were, overcoming a lot of struggle and, going to accompany my mom to immigration court or even court as she tried to, regain the wages that were stolen by her employer. And she'd always stand up for herself, even, dealing with so much. And it really inspired me to have those same values. And, she was very much in a way, a civil rights, activist herself. Um, and that inspired me. And I moved around a lot. I lived, the first city we moved to was a small town called Rolla, Missouri. And then we moved to Loma Linda, California, and then Canoga Park. I actually was living in Canoga Park during the Northridge earthquake, and it went through that and had to sleep in a church parking lot for like 3 days because our apartment was condemned. And also shout out to Styles of Beyond, a great hip hop group from Canoga Park. No one hasn't checked them out. And then North Hollywood, I also lived there, which was, kind of great as a teenager because I took the Metro bus to school and I could take the Metro bus to downtown Burbank, Universal City. Public transit has always been something to me is so important for independence of youth. And so I think that was something I had a really good relationship with growing up. There was a trolley in Whittier. We ended up moving to Whittier later that I used to take around when I was a teenager too, to Uptown Whittier and to the mall. And that was another source of, independence. And that's something that I'm really passionate about is to improve public transit, make our streets safer, improve cycling, in our city because it's not just about being able to go out leisurely, but it's really a method of transportation and it's really a form of independence for young people because I think just like a few decades ago 70% of youth um, took their bikes to school
Mm.
and now cars are still the leading cause of death in of children in LA. And in order to change that, we have to make our streets safer. And we have to, elevate those other forms of transportation as well, and normalize them. And yeah, and I was an activist since I was 17. When I was in California high school, I helped lead and organize a walkout of 1,500 students against this bill, Cop Representation 21, that was basically racial, codifying racial profiling of youth of color. And we were also protesting the fact that our state continues to prioritize building prisons over investing in education. And all of these things, led me to become an attorney because I wanted to use my position to help the people who are in a, more vulnerable or not able to speak for themselves as strongly, being a voice for the voiceless, or at least, like also platforming their positions or their voices. And I think that's an incredibly important responsibility as an attorney is to make sure that we're using our positions in an ethical way. But oftentimes, attorneys are gatekeepers for the powerful and the wealthy, like the Epsteins, but they don't get the same sort of attention in the same way as like the business, leaders. But they're the ones, writing the memos, helping make sure that things are, legal on paper and writing the business deals. And so it's really important, I think, to me for it to be a have integrity and make sure that I'm following my values. And that's why I'm not running as a Democrat or a Republican in this race. And I'm running with as a socialist with the Peace and Freedom Party because that party has very much explicit values of what they stand for, which I believe in because I'm wondering now what do these parties stand for anymore? And on top of that, they have been an anti-war party from the outset and have not deviated from that. And that's really important for me as someone who's anti-imperialist, who was born during a war, who is emphatically against war. And I don't think, we should have any, investment in those types of weapons and conflicts. And so I'm happy to be associated with a group that I know stands by its values. So but yeah, and I'm also a big foodie and I love all the great restaurants of Los Angeles and coffee shops. And I think I've lived in, DC, New York, the Bay Area, Geneva, Switzerland, Cambodia, all these different places, but nothing tops the food in Los Angeles. The amount of diversity and yeah, like all the mom and pop shops and restaurants. So that's the other side of me, but yeah.
And you mentioned the fact that you stand with a party that has always been anti-war, that has always been upfront about its values, but that I think, in the estimation of a lot of people out there, probably intimidates the two-party system, probably upsets the two-party system. So, in your view, what is it that's so intimidating about a socialist platform for both Republicans and Democrats? Because I think this needs to be pointed out to folks who are going to hear a lot about how socialists are fanatics out there who seek to rob everyone of their private property, who seek to give out free things everywhere and all the time, and therefore run this system into the ground as though it hadn't done that for itself already several times. But in your view, what is it that intimidates and really upsets the two-party system, including as we see it in this race, because we will see it through this race. And I'd be thrilled if you could speak to that now as opposed to later, just to be upfront about things, as you pointed out about the party.
I think, well, there's a few different things in there, right? Like, firstly, I think you touched upon it that the system's already running itself on the ground. Socialism has received a lot of propaganda in the sense that, like, oh, you're taking, someone else's money and giving it to someone else. But we're seeing that already with corporations being subsidized, oil companies being subsidized, the fact that rich people basically pay no taxes when we used to have a 70 or even 90% tax bracket, before Reagan, on the rich, and it still happens, in Europe. And so we already have this system of socialism for the rich and for the uber wealthy corporations getting basically support from the government. But the problem is working people are not getting that. Working people are getting so much of their taxes to the government, and this goes to the military, this goes to, programs that are not directly benefiting them. So in a way, socialism is really just paying them back for their work. And it's creating a more complete circle where their labor is not just going to a boss and then going to the profits of just the boss. And now we have I think we have the widest gap between executives and workers in history, where I think it's 300 to the executives make 300 times more than the lowest paid worker. And we just saw the Starbucks CEO is taking a company jet. Nobody should have a company jet, but a company jet every day, essentially, to work. And it's just, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars and all of that pollution. So it's just ludicrous in that sense. But, and I think one thing, I just saw this right before we met, is Ro Khanna, who's the Congress member in the Bay Area. He said he's been very critical and a big voice in the Democratic Party. He said we need a new deal like FDR. And everybody, hears that and thinks so many positive things. But he was being supported by the socialist and communist parties at the time. He was pushing these ideas because socialism was so popular, and all of the unions
You mean
were pushing.
FDR?
Yeah, FDR. He was endorsed by them, and he was pushing these ideas because he was supported by these organizations. And at that time, we had a really strong union movement, and they were demanding, like, we got Social Security, Medicaid, all these things that came out of it are socialism. Like, we want our government to take care of us. We want to pay our taxes and get something back. We don't want those taxes to go to, helping shareholders of people in politics. And I think it's really that, and like people should realize it's really just getting back rather than letting this money just disappear, being taken care of, being a able to go get health care without paying, everybody is healthy. Everybody gets, higher literacy rates because education is free and more accessible. Um, so it's really about creating a more equal playing field rather than making it so people are, fighting each other over scraps, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned this because in terms of the sheer amount, the sheer volume of propaganda that people accept as some sort of reality. Uh, it's funny because I was speaking with a friend just this morning. We were grabbing some tamales just on Temple Street in Filipino Town, and this friend was telling me about how, especially growing up in the 80s, he really thought that living in this country, living in the United States, was nothing but a dream come true. His favorite president was, at that time, when he was younger, Ronald Reagan of all people, because he felt like here was someone with so much power and so much influence who looked over the nation benevolently. But this same friend told me as time passed, he began to see the system for what it actually is, a system of exploitation, a system of limited liability companies, a system of even union control, like a sort of union monopolization at this very local level in Los Angeles, of our elected officials who control them, who tell them what they can or cannot vote on. And it's difficult because this friend of mine now has a really tough time looking at the political process and seeing any hope for it whatsoever. But here comes along a campaign like yours, um, and it inspires so many people from all across the board. And I'm sure that you've met folks through the last couple of weeks who have told you about how they've been waiting for a candidate who is for the people, by the people, uh, not simply through what they have to say, but through their actions, through their policy. And so, of course, we have in New York the first ever Democrat socialist or social democrat in that city's history. And so this is a moment actually where a lot of people need an alternative and need to be brought into that alternative. And I believe that this is what you're looking to offer through the LA City Attorney's office as an attorney yourself. And so maybe you can tell me a little bit about that, about what you see in terms of this moment for people to finally reclaim their city from those who only pretend to represent them, but who actually take a lot more than they are entitled to as our elected officials.
I appreciate that. And, yeah, I've had people from all different types of backgrounds excited about this campaign. Even just seeing like an immigrant running and an Iranian running. When I filed my papers at the clerk's office, some guy started chasing me down and asked, "Oh, are you Iranian?" And he said, "Well, I'm so proud to see an Iranian, running for office." And it's a big deal. It's really hard to even get to this position. I had to fight all my life just to overcome so many odds and adversity just to get to this position. And I think that's what fueled my integrity and sticking to my values, even, sacrificing so much. And that's what I want to do when I get into office because the goal, I mean, I think that's why also, it's so important to run third party because there tends to be this tendency of constantly blaming Trump for everything
Mm,
while avoiding local responsibilities and local issues. And some of the biggest issues we have here is the fact that, we're blocking affordable housing. We're again, continuing to spend money and resources on surveillance technology, continuing to criminalize poverty. Um, Continuing to not enforce our own environmental laws. I think that's a really big issue. And so, um, you know, and as someone who's not under these two parties, I think people have, they get invested into someone's campaign and have so many hopes for them, and then they get disappointed when they get elected to office because they are beholden to their funders, to the special interests, to the parties they're a part of, and their focus is obviously going to the next political leapfrog, political stone or stepping stone. And my goal is to change this office to improve it for the people. And I think people don't realize how powerful the city attorney's office can be in the sense of, it's advising the mayor and city council. It's handling all of the litigation, both affirmative and defensive litigation for the city, and it's handling all the misdemeanors. So there's an incredible amount of responsibility. There's 500 attorneys just in the office, and so there's so much potential to really transform our city, to hold these politicians accountable who are giving contracts to their friends, or holding them accountable when they approve projects that completely skirt environmental laws, or hold them accountable when they are trying to pass laws that you know restrict our freedom of speech. And we don't have that right now. We really don't. Right now, we have someone who's associated with the Epstein files running our Olympics program that's not being held accountable. um, there's been absolutely no accountability regarding the Epstein files in this country. We can start there at the prosecutor level. I would look into the files and see if I can file any charges. And we need to hear that from every prosecutor in the country because it's ridiculous that such egregious things are happening and we're not seeing a wave of reaction by our elected officials. And that's what we should be seeing. It's ridiculous that we're seeing ICE invade our communities and not every single elected official, every single prosecutor in this country saying I will bring charges against ICE officers, which is what I would do. I would use every resource in my tool to slow them down. And that's what I want to hear from other elected officials. And I think we all want to hear that because we're tired of these speeches, these strongly worded letters, these, people telling, the camera F ICE, but then calling the police and National Guard on the protesters. I think we're all tired of that. We want to see something different. And that's what I'm bringing. And I want us to know, the city to know that we have options. And I'm right here.
And I'm right here. That's a fact. Oh my goodness. Now, to be sure, because we have so much more to tell about this story and because we want to get even more people involved, we have an event just this Friday night, the
Wow.
social, the
Just
Singles for Social Justice
social
event.
justice singles.
The Social Justice Singles event, thank you, at none other than the Lyric Hyperion just this Friday night from 7 to 9 p.m. I will have the pleasure of hosting this event, but for the first time ever. It's actually the second iteration of another successful night just like it, only a couple weeks back. Tell me, especially for folks who are on the fence, who maybe have seen the flyer but are not too sure just what they'll find, tell me what folks can expect. Tell me what folks are going to learn more about, and tell me why people should come out and RSVP immediately because it's going to be a blast and it's exactly what we need, especially at this time with the political season just getting started out here and everywhere.
Yeah, so tomorrow we're gonna have another session of our social justice singles. It was really successful last time where people just felt, connected to the community. We brought in, representatives from like Peace and Freedom Party, some, ICE patrols, as well as other activists to speak in order to also connect folks with you know, possible community activism. Because basically we kind of created this catch-all request, like what do you want to be connected to, and a lot of people were like actually community organizing, and so we basically plugged that in. It's a very chill environment where you just sit at a table and we have icebreakers, and it's just about getting to know each other and creating and building community, because that's also what my campaign is about. Because right now we need community, we need to feel like we have each other's backs and know our neighbors, and this is part of it. And I hope to see as many people as they want to come there. And it has nothing, every person of every orientation, background, gender is welcome tonight as or tomorrow night as well. So come on down and don't feel pressured about anything, and come and meet a new friend as well.
So we're going to make sure that it's a welcoming space for everyone, whoever they are, wherever they are coming from, so long as the interest is to build and develop community because people need that more than ever at this time when they see so much that leads them to feel helpless, that leads them to feel abandoned or isolated or like there is no recourse. What you're saying is actually there are all kinds of different avenues by which to get involved, and this is just an entry point into that. So why not give it a shot?
Yeah, exactly. And I hope to see everybody there. And with that, I thanks a lot for your time, Jimmy, tonight. It was great
Yeah,
speaking,
likewise. Yes, of
and
course.
looking forward to more lives. And thanks for everybody who plugged in and joined in. And go to idaforla.com to donate. We're a grassroots campaign, and keep following along for more events. And go to the website also to subscribe to our newsletter. Thanks so much. Good night.
Absolutely. Have a good night. Ciao, ciao.